Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 3, The Successful Child of the Field Notes of the Proven. So, some families have black sheep, some have the successful child. And that someone would be someone like me. They're the ones who usually make it look easy, the one who kind of has it all together, the one who, on the surface, always looks like they're winning. And from the outside, they look happy. They show up well, they're interesting, they're impressive, they seem grounded, they seem stable, they seem like they figured it out. But there's a real truth behind all this. He's stabilizing the room. He's listening to everyone else's stories, constantly measuring himself quietly. Was that real success? Was mine better? Was mine meaningful? Did I do enough? Did I do it cleaner? Did I do it better? Did I do it smarter? Did I do it faster? He's not celebrating, he's scanning. And recently, someone said to me something that kind of stuck. That you can't apply logic to experience like you're trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. But the thing is that's exactly what a successful child does. They treat life like a puzzle to optimize. If I line up the colors just right, or if I perform just right, or if I regulate just right, then maybe I'll finally feel settled. And somewhere kind of along the way, the successful child stops becoming a person and it ultimately becomes a role. Through a really great and intensive search for self-discovery, I started to realize that this role forms early. No one really, I guess, kind of assigns it to you. No one really says, hey, you're the successful child, or this is what you're in charge of, or you're in charge of stability. But you just know it, you feel it. You learn what keeps the systems calm. You learn that performance earns praise, that composure earns trust. There's always this black and white cause and effect thing that's rattling along in your head, that like not needing anything makes you easier to love, or maybe more understandable, or maybe more friendly or lovable or likable. So you kind of shrink and become low maintenance, high achieving, emotionally contained, but you become impressive instead of expressive. And on paper, though, what's the craziest part is that it works. But there's a strange belief that forms inside the role, like almost as if there's this invisible crown waiting somewhere, that if you do it just right, or if you perform well enough, or if you keep stabilizing the room, eventually someone will hand it to you or give you the award, or you're going to get first place, or you'll get the recognition that you so want, or maybe even deserve to have, or you'll finally achieve the security that you need to feel stable, or get the arrival, that the presence you've been looking for. The truth is, at least from my understanding thus far, there is no crown. And instead of simply doing that, the work, the life, the experience, the successful child starts regulating everything. Think of it as a hybrid between two things. And maybe those two things are, I don't know, X and Y. Most people just do X. They try it, they fail, they learn, they adjust. But the successful child, yeah, no, they don't just do X. They regulate it, they optimize it, control it, they manage how it looks, how it lands, they manage how they appear while doing it, and slowly the role becomes less about living and more about managing the conditions around it living. But like, okay, to be fair, a lot of good comes from it. You do learn a lot. And I could say that I think there's a lot of lessons that I've learned in my life around kind of keeping within this formula that have been really great, which to some degree is kind of the reason why it took me so long to recognize that it was more detrimental to my life than it was giving me life. You do realize that you learn a lot of self-reliance. You certainly learn discipline. You learn how to depend upon yourself and know how to get out of pretty much any problem. You learn the art of communication in a way that serves you really well. You learn how to execute things really well, flawlessly, and how it will look and appear and be presented well. You learn how to push through anything. You learn how to outwork your own doubt or your own self-critic. You also learn something about something all the time. However, you do also learn something else. You learn that your gut just isn't fully programmed. Like sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it gives you that moment where something lands and you feel proud. But really, like most of the time, it just stays quiet. So you kind of build something else instead. And honestly, that thing is probably utility. You kind of learn that hard work is the safest thing you can control. You link effort to anything that might put you in a better light. You learn that if something good happens, it was probably some sort of output of all the hard work you put in preceding it, or for pushing it further, or for tightening the system. And here's the other big part of it. When it comes to praise, well, praise is nice, but I don't rely on it. I don't think anyone else in this kind of role did too. It's really because like your mind, it doesn't stick that way. Like success wasn't luck. It wasn't someone giving you the permission. You didn't beat the odds. You just denied the constraints. You worked, you adapted, you pushed through. So on the surface, you become known as the solid worker, basically. The one who delivers, the one who figures it out, the overachiever, the perfectionist, reliable, dependable. And over time, effort becomes the language that you just most trust. But there's such like an invisible loss to being the successful child. You lose so much permission in your life across so many facets. And that's what makes this such a high anxiety type of life or role that you live. You lose the permission to fail because your criticism is so rampant, and your fear of being, quote, ordinary or misunderstood or a failure just reigns so supreme in your mind. You lose permission to be messy because you're so worried about the critiques of others, and most importantly, your own inner critic. You lose permission to not have it together because there's this weird perception that if I fail or I look like I don't have it together, then people won't like me or I won't have utility. And most importantly, I think you lose the permission to need reassurance because you don't trust your gut. You don't think anyone's going to understand you. So you kind of feel a bit stuck. As I'm sitting here saying all of this, in a strange way, being the successful child is kind of like earning an MBA in self-correction. Hear me out for a minute. You kind of become so incredibly skilled at identifying errors, some very fast, some before anyone else even notices. You strive to keep the peace, but internally you maintain like this very high bar. You fear being misunderstood, even when you know you haven't even fully explained yourself to anyone. So what do? You overperform, not to impress anyone, but to avoid becoming ordinary. You carry weight that's not even yours. And of course, the most common thing I would say for me is I just take responsibility as fast as I possibly can. Sometimes even when no one asks me to. It's almost like bidding against yourself in an auction, because in that sense, it's almost like you feel that ownership is more powerful than the uncertainty. So it's just easier to correct it and regulate it, and then quickly execute and perform. And I think it is misperceived, but it's not. You don't do this out of ego, but you just do it out of discipline and habit, because discipline becomes the structure that you most trust. And after a while, though, when you do this so many times and you realize you take on so much ownership and so much pressure all the time, the success really starts to wane and feel a bit empty. And it's because it's executed, it's optimized, and it's there to impress other people, and it's there to make everyone else really happy at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, it's really just that, wasn't fully chosen. It isn't fully owned. It was straight performance for someone else. And many of the times it wasn't even for you. And I know I mentioned this over the past few episodes, but this is really where things kind of started to shift for me, was when I finally signed up for the half marathon. And the half marathon, on the surface, is not the most impressive thing that I've ever done. And it's not the most impressive thing even in life. A lot of people run much faster than me. Plenty of people train harder. They have better records, better times. They have better averages. They have better splits. They have better mile times. They have better everything. But for me, this was just the first time I chose something that wasn't about stabilizing anyone else. And it sounds maybe like super, super small, but when at the time, the mental anguish of the way I was living required a change. And this was the only thing that was the first hit that felt like it was my own. And the truth of everything was that it wasn't about being impressive in any room. It wasn't about maintaining an image. It wasn't about protecting even the successful child role, because at the time I didn't know I wanted to get rid of it, but I knew it didn't suit me yet. It was really the first step, quite honestly, of doing something that really wasn't glamorous. I'm a firm believer that you have to fall in love with the process before you can fall in love with the outcome. And I knew that getting up, day in and day out, working out, running, risking injury was going to be difficult, and it wasn't going to be glamorous. But none of this was meant to be dramatic or Instagram worthy and to take the photo of look at me signing up. It wasn't anything other than just mine. It was quiet. It was me signing up for something that I wasn't even optimized for and certainly not ready for. And that first step, that invisible struggle to even try, meant more than the finish line, quite honestly, because the craziest thing that it finally did was it did break the formula. It disrupted the script. It wasn't me proving that I was capable. It was me taking a risk and a true gamble on myself where failure was quite honestly an option. And I know I'm probably not the only one out there at all who ever took the first step towards making a change. And that's what kind of makes this so inspiring. This whole idea of taking a risk and trying and doing something new and different applies to so many different people. And honestly, I commend anyone who takes the first step of trying to make a change in their life because it is super, super hard. It applies to the person applying for the job that you're not qualified for, posting the thing before it's polished, starting the therapy, ending your relationship that you wanted to get out of and or maybe wasn't right for you, or trying something new where you weren't, ready for it or whatever it was. The first step is never impressive. It's just destabilizing. And that's why this all matters, because to me, breaking the formula is terrifying, but it's also where something real begins. And honestly, finishing the race, spoiler alert, I did finish the race, didn't feel powerful because it was flawless. It felt powerful because I stepped outside the role. And for the first time, I literally owned that success and it wasn't performed. But honestly though, I am still figuring all of this out despite the half marathon accomplishment, because what I've carried with me and what I think a lot of people carry is a steady habit of questioning. And honestly, for a long time, that questioning looked like calibration. Am I doing it right? Am I enough? And did that land well? Are they looking at me differently? Should I have not asked that question? Was that a stupid question? Do they think I don't deserve my job title or promotion? Did I celebrate too much? Did I not celebrate enough? Because I started to ultimately realize something through all these questions, that a lot of that calibration wasn't about understanding myself. I was trying to become the model citizen, the optimized version of a person, or the version that would be most respected or approved of or recognized or whatever. But the more I stepped into things that actually felt like my own, the more that questioning has changed. Today, I, of course, still struggle with questioning, I think as many people do, but the calibration, I think, is a little different. It's no longer about asking, is this the right move according to someone else? It's more about asking, is this the person I want to become? As much as I say I'm not trying, I'm doing my absolute best to not try to get external validation. I'm looking for the inner voice that tells me that something fits, the one that shows up when something feels honest. And I recognized in the last episode I spoke about when you face the mirror and you get the butterflies in your stomach, that type of feeling, that type of honesty. When something kind of feels aligned, or when something feels like progress, not towards perfection, but progress in this case being an identity that's like mine, that I like and I want to grow into. And that to me is why Only the Proven is so important, because that's what proving in this part of the journey is about. It's not proving to the room that you can do something. It's ultimately just proving it to yourself that you're worthy and you can accomplish it and you will do it. So I think some families, like I said, have a black sheep. Some have the successful child. And I think some of us are just proving, honestly, not in one lane, but across multiple layers. Whether you're proving it through your military service, through sickness or sobriety, motherhood, becoming an athlete for the first time, moving away or starting over, or through leaving something that once defined you, proving just isn't a role. It is much more of an experience. It's like something that happens when life stretches you beyond what you've rehearsed. And I'm still trying to honestly understand it. I'm still questioning whether this kind of motivation of high octane internal fuel is strength or just another version of the role. But today, at least I think it might be something else. And I tend to believe and strongly see that this might be what happens when you stop optimizing your life and you really just start experiencing it. I don't know if proving ever really goes away, and maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe it just needs to be shared, and maybe it needs to be surrounded by people who don't need you to perform. I can't imagine all those struggles that a person faces, but I do want to learn about what everyone goes through enduring this proving cycle, and even after proven is like achieved in life, of that you've achieved whatever goal you were looking for, I do want to hear and I want to understand them, and I want to build a community of people who are moving through them, people who are always proving and trying to be something that makes them truly happy and unique in their own life. And whether they do that quietly and perfectly or honestly, I want to be there on the sidelines and just as a proud supporter and champion of it. And I say all this while I'm in the proving myself. So all that to say, maybe the role kept you safe at one point, but maybe now you get to live without that role and be the person you always want to become.